This is Pat Junko, and I'm going to be doing the demo of the Sterile Field procedure. Some reasons why you may need to set up a sterile field would be perhaps you are in an OR or an OB setting in which it is necessary to set this to open this field, prepare it, and then allow someone else who has sterile gloves to take this. Perhaps you're doing a wound dressing that requires sterile technique. Again, I am going to set up this field, but I'm not going to have on sterile gloves while I do this. So anything that I touch, I'm going to have to be very careful that I'm not touching a part that needs to be and needs to remain and be considered sterile. Some of the equipment that I need are my sterile bowl, my solution, a cup to pour off, my gauze sponges, and as with every procedure, I'm going to wash my hands before I start. I have the alcohol-based hand rub for that. Let's talk and review for a moment the principles of surgical asepsis that we addressed with the sterile glove procedure also. I have my surface up to waist height. It is clean and dry. We do not turn our back on a sterile field. Once it is set up, we do not leave it exposed to air for long periods of time. Anything that falls over the edge of this table is considered contaminated, as is a 1-inch border once you have this set up. We go in from the shortest distance possible to our sterile field, very slow, very methodical, and very cautious as we do that. I will need to speak as I do this demonstration. Normally we would not speak over a sterile field. So I have gotten my equipment. Let's look at the bowl. The bowl has a tape on it with black marks, which indicates that it's been through the autoclave. That means it's been heated to an adequate temperature so that the bowl is considered sterile within here. I'm going to get the solution that the physician has ordered for this procedure. This order is for sodium chloride, normal saline. So when I take my solution out, I'm going to do my first check. I have 0.9% sodium chloride, which I'm comparing to the physician's order. The expiration date from the manufacturer is good, and because this has been opened previously, I'm now looking for the open date and time. Check on your agency policy. Sometimes this can be open for up to 24 hours. If I would not find an open date or time on this, I would have to consider this contaminated and throw it and get another. In many facilities now, we have smaller containers and things are unit dose, so you use what you need and then you throw it. I will keep this cup out for when we're actually pouring our sodium chloride. So I've done my first check of that. I'm now going to check my 4x4 packages, and I brought in an extra one in case I need it. These packages do not have expiration dates on them, so I'm looking for other signs of intactness. They are clean, dry, there are no rips or tears, there is no discoloration, so those gauze sponges look good. I will now open my bowl. So I'm going to open so the first flap goes away from me, and you'll notice as I do this that I'm going to come to the side here a little bit so that my arm does not go over the sterile field, so that I stay to the side. It's like there's an invisible fence around this when we get done. So I open the back flap, and then that second flap just kind of came out on its own. That's okay. And here's the second flap, and here's the third. All right. Now, as we look at this, this kind of curled under, which is fine. I have a 1-inch border now up above here that's considered contaminated. These edges that came down over the edge of the table, this much is considered contaminated, as is the front. And now I'm not going to turn my back. If I had to leave now to get further supplies, I would have to consider this contaminated, since I can't look at it and keep my eyes on it the whole time. I'm now going to do my second check of my sodium chloride. I have 0.9% sodium chloride. The expiration date is good, and the open date is good. I will now open my gauze sponges, and I'm just going to need one package of sponge here. So I'm going to come along the side. I'm going to use my thumbs here to very carefully open this whole top edge kind of all at once. And very slow, very methodical. And one of the things that you can do now is, I'm staying away from my sterile field but keeping it in my vision. You can peel this back, okay? And now I want to come in the shortest distance possible over my sterile field, which is going to be from right here. I'm going to come in, and I don't want to touch this package to the bowl. I'm going to come in and drop the 4x4s in there and then come back out. So I come in, flip, and come back out. I will now do my third check of my sodium chloride against the physician's order or the medic's. I have 0.9% sodium chloride, which is what the physician has ordered. The expiration date is good and the open date is good. I'm ready to pour this solution now, so I've checked it 3 times. I'm going to take the cap off. And as you learned previously, we're going to set that with the top down and the opening up. I'm holding this with the label in the palm of my hand as we do when we're pouring liquids. And I need to pour off a little bit, because this sodium chloride had been opened previously. I'm going to pour off a little bit to be sure that the top is sterile. So I'm going to pour off a little bit into a cup. I'm going to keep this in my hand. I'm going to go in the shortest distance, pour, and then come back out. There was no splashing, no fluid, got in contact anywhere outside of the bowl. Put the lid back on here, and I have completed that step. Now we need to talk about how to pass this sterile bowl. Perhaps I'm working in an OR setting, and I am the nurse who is setting up the sterile field, but another nurse who has sterile gloves on is now going to actually use this bowl and needs to take it. So now I need to come in from the longest distance in order to grab a hold of this bowl. And I think I'm probably going to come under right here. Because the part that comes up and touches the bowl, we have to be sure that it's going to be considered sterile. So I'm coming now the longest distance under that wrap. And I grasp the edge of the bowl and pick it up. Now all of this I need to very carefully move out of the way. So that the person coming with the sterile gloves will not be contaminated. And I would now, the bowl is sterile, the liquid in it is sterile, the 4x4s are sterile. And I would now pass this bowl to a person who is holding that, who has on sterile gloves, who could then take it and use it in that particular environment. So you please remember, as with the sterile glove procedure, if you think you have contaminated, and the only way you'll know if you've contaminated is if you are very familiar with the principles of surgical asepsis. If you think you have contaminated, you need to identify that and tell us how you contaminated and what you would do about it, which might be to start over. If you do contaminate and do not identify that, you will be unsuccessful with this procedure. This ends the procedure for Sterile Field.